Hi, thanks for tuning into this episode of QRP to QRO. My name is Steve, and this is episode number 16. It's a bit of a follow-up video to number 15, which was mostly a gear talk on my Ohio to Erie bicycle route bike trip. So in 15, that was the first leg of, I'll call it a two-leg trip. And in that one, I went up from the Columbus area to Lake Erie up around Cleveland, and then started making my way back home. And the southern end of it, leg 2, is what this video is all about. And I'm not going to rehash everything gear-wise that I went over in video 15. So check that out. It is a long video. It's a little over 2 hours. But if you check the description, there are timestamps in there that break down the gear by category. So that may help you out if you're trying to scroll through a little faster, or if you want to go back and reference something later on that I talked about. Hopefully that helps you guys out a little bit. So with that having been said, there are a couple of gear changes that I did in between. The first one is, and you can check this out in the beginning of video 15, I talked about the second stem and the dummy handlebar that I have. And the main reason is, or the main reason for that setup is it allows me to have my handlebar bag down off the handlebars, and it keeps everything up top a little bit more clear for my hand positions. But before the trip, before the first leg of the trip, I got this mirror, and one of the biggest challenges I had was with all the gear and equipment on the back of the bike, I wasn't able to see around it because the mirror was in so far. And this is the original dummy bar that I had. And what I did is I extended that. I made a new one here that's 8 inches longer on the left side. So by having that extension on there, my visibility is out a lot further around, so I can see around the stuff on the back of the bike. And before I actually went on the trip, I did do a test ride with it, with mostly an empty bike. And it is a little bit awkward having the mirror way out there. It is hanging out quite a bit. But in all honesty, having the visibility far outweighs the distance that it is out away from the bike, in my book anyway. It helped me out tremendously on this leg. So the second change, let me set this off to the side, is you can check the electronic segment in video 15 for details on the antenna mount. And the way that I came up with, again, the design or the dimensions of this bracket that the mount sits on is it was sized to the width of the top of the rack, as well as my bedroll with the 2 sleeping pads rolled up. That was supposed to clear the mast and the back of the saddle. Well, in the first leg of the trip, again, I'll show some pictures after the little bit of a talk here. What I did was, since the bedroll was pretty much taking up this entire space, the 2 yellow dry sacks that I had, the big ones, I looped those up over top of the bedroll with a rope. And what that did was it brought the weight that was in those bags up. And in my opinion, the weight balance or the center of gravity was a little bit odd. And the better idea would be to drop that weight down lower off to the side. So this trip, leg 2, I decided to push this mount backwards a few inches. And I added this block of wood. And again, I'll show some pictures exactly of how the bag's attached to it. But having the bags, instead of being up higher, attached to this block of wood, dropped that center of gravity and made everything a lot more stable. And the other thing too with this back as far as it is, one of the challenges I did have was keeping the bags clear of the back tire. So I did play around with it a bit and got things adjusted to where it was functional and it was rideable. So all said and done with the trip, it worked out a lot better than the first round. So with that, as far as mileage goes on the trip, both legs were 557 miles total, which isn't the exact double distance of out and back. I think it's close to 400 miles. The whole thing is anyway. But the first leg I did have some weather challenges and timing challenges, so I ended up cutting that ride back home a little bit short. But the second leg, all said and done, was 270 miles point to point, or I should say point out and back. So the remainder of that would have been the first route. As far as the amount of days, it was 11 days. So part of that was on the way down. I did run into a wind advisory, so I decided to take 2 days off the trail, let that blow through. And then also on the way back, just north of Cincinnati in that same camp spot, I stopped for another day just to get caught up on laundry and cleaning some things, etc. And that worked out pretty good. So if you take out I'll call them 3 0 days, that was 8 days of actually moving. So between moving and resupplies. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into some pictures. The first picture here is of the last day of leg 1. And you can see in the back how the yellow bags are sitting up high. That's because the support rope that's tying those on is sitting up over top of the bedroll, which is in the black trash bag you see directly behind the saddle. So with the new position, as you can see in this picture, the two yellow bags, they sit a lot lower to the ground, and they're also a lot further behind the bike as well. So look at a top view of that, you can get a better idea of the perspective with respect to the red rear panniers. Then the next picture here is of the bike rolling down the trail, or as it is rolling down the trail. And the black trash bag that you see on the top has, again, lighter, bulky things in it, like one of my cups, my plate, utensils. I think I had a couple of canisters in there for the canister stove. But things that don't weigh a whole lot but take up a bit of space. That's what I kept in that bag, and again, with it being lighter weight, it doesn't throw off the center of gravity as much as one of those heavier bags would sitting up high. And then the last picture here is a side view of the bike all loaded. Again, you can see the perspective of the yellow bags with respect to the rear panniers, the red bags. The yellow bags sit a little bit further behind, and they're also sitting down low. So it keeps that center of gravity a lot lower to the ground. Another thing I'll point out in this picture too is if you look on the front, I have one of my gallon water jugs hanging off there. Most of the trip in the beginning, I had 2 Nalgene bottles that I hung up there, one on each side. But as I went along the trip and resupplied, I ended up with a few more of these gallon jugs. And just to get the weight distribution riding a little bit better, instead of having the weight of the gallon jugs on the back with all the equipment, I decided to put those up in the front and then put the Nalgenes in the back. And that shift in weight made a big difference in the stability of the ride going down the trail also. So it actually worked out pretty well. Before I get into the picture slideshow in this video, I did want to talk about some ride data for a few minutes. And I noticed when I was going through these clips that the playback might be a little bit fuzzy. So if that's how it appears on the final video, it's just the way that it is, and I'm going to roll with it. It is a screen recording software, so it's not the greatest of quality. I find the ride data interesting to collect. What we're looking at is my annual riding chart. So maybe some of my viewers will find this interesting as well. The main thing that I keep track of is the mileage. So seasonally, that's the main thing I look at. This particular season, my mileage goal is 1,500. It's not a huge goal, but that is about the most I've done in a calendar year. So I thought that would be an attainable goal to set for this season, 2020. Today is the 28th of November, and as of today, my total is about 1420. So that leaves me with about 80 miles, a little over 80 miles left to go for the season. Now I am in Ohio, and we have the month of December to go. Yeah, it is a winter month, but it's not usually too terrible to get some mileage in. So if we break that 80 miles down, that's really 4 20-mile bike rides. So it's well within the realm of reasonability to get that knocked out before the close of the year, if not maybe a little bit more. Some other things that I keep track of are the ride time, the average speed, max speed, average cadence, and max cadence. And an important note to point out with the speed, both the speed and the ride time, is these are not moving. These are all up. So that includes all stops, whether I'm grabbing a snack, if I get something to drink, go to the bathroom. In the case of the Ohio to Erie route adventures, which is the point of this video and also the previous one, video 15, if I stop and go to town to resupply, or if I stop for lunch or dinner at a restaurant, and I'm going to be continuing on down the trail beyond those points, all of these averages take that time into account. So it's a little bit different maybe with my data than how some others might collect theirs. A couple other things I won't spend a whole lot of time on the generality of this chart because I do want to get to the Ohio to Erie route portion of it. But there are 2 bikes that I ride, the disc trucker being the touring bike, of course, so that's got the higher miles. Then the folding bike is my Dayhan, which I do ride that from time to time as well. And then you can see the total mileage on each bike over there. So moving on to the Ohio to Erie route adventures and route planning, that's really the main point of the data that I want to show you guys. Mileage over here is really only one metric of what a bike ride entails effort-wise. So yeah, that is the distance that you're going, but being a bicycle and human-powered, the mileage in and of itself doesn't tell you anything about the strenuousness of that segment of the ride. That's where this elevation gain comes into play. And in the past, I was never really interested in elevation gain. I did have some rides that were in the hills that were obviously more difficult than would flat ground be. So before this Ohio to Erie trip, one of the things I did start looking at was the elevation gain. So on some of these longer rides, I went back in and found what my bike computer had for the elevation gain, and I started keeping track of that. If you think about it, take a 40-mile bike ride, for example. If you have maybe 400 feet of elevation gain over that 40 miles, and then you compare that same 40 miles to a ride segment that may have an elevation gain of 1,500 or 2,000 feet, then that segment, that 40-mile segment with the 400 feet of elevation gain, is going to be noticeably easier and faster than would be the 1,500 to 2,000. So that's where you can really start to see, again, how strenuous a particular ride may be. So if we scroll down here, we'll get into October and November. Those are the 2 months of my Ohio to Erie adventures. And I've got that split out differently here in another sheet. So everything above the black line is the first leg of the trip, which was from the Columbus area up to Lake Erie, and then a little bit on the way back. And then everything below the black line is the second leg of the trip. So from the Columbus area down to Cincinnati in Kentucky, and then all the way back. The first line item I want to talk about here is the 17th of October. And if you look at the mileage, that was the second highest mileage of the 2 legs of the trip, the highest being the 54 down here. We'll talk about that one here in a minute. But what's interesting to note about this day is that was a day where I broke camp and started moving. So I started the bike computer recording once I started moving for the day. And then a little while down the trail, I stopped for breakfast. And also, it was one of the few days that I had sun, so I got the solar panels going. And all said and done, that particular stop, if you will, ended up being about 3.5 hours of sitting. So when you look at that average speed and the ride time, the 12.5 hours, that's including all of that sitting time. So again, for me, planning mileage, etc., that average speed, it needs to be the all-up average for the day and not the moving average. So, of course, the less stops that you make and the more time that you can be moving, then the closer that your moving average can start to approach what that overall average is, but you're still going to have two different numbers. So if you're riding, say you're making a 10 mile an hour average moving speed, let's say you get a flat tire. All of those delays, if you will drag down that overall average speed. And that's why I don't like using that moving speed for any route planning purposes. It just doesn't work out. So with that having been said, the mileage that I came up with for a daily average in my case was about 30 miles a day. So if you factor in everything, the stops, moderate elevation, all of that, I was fairly comfortable with that 30 miles. And I will say too, there's two other things that I ride too. First and foremost is, what does my body tell me? Do my knees hurt? Do my legs hurt? Is there something else that's slowing me down that particular day? Is it really cold and windy and I'm layered up? And the other is conditions. And when I say conditions, that is weather conditions, but also trip conditions. So do I need to stop in town and resupply? Do I have a flat tire? All of that factors into it. So there are other things that ultimately govern, I've got a 30-mile goal for the day, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go that. Or in the case of, like this day down here, we'll talk about that in a minute, I've got a tailwind. So that allows me to make up some higher miles. So it's, again, just different ways of looking at information and comparing things. And it's interesting for me to see that and compare that from day to day. So let's look down here at we'll go to the 16th, and we'll look at also the 20th, and we'll compare these. These are two very comparable rides, actually, because they were both on very similar trail conditions without a whole lot of elevation, and the activities for the day were pretty much identical as well. So other than food and necessary gear adjustments, all the critical stops, I'll call it, I kept moving both days. So here on the 16th, though, we had a headwind, and on the 20th, there was a tailwind. So if we look at that as far as the average speed goes, we can see that on the 16th, the speed average was 5.3, and on the 20th, it was down about 7, or was up about 7.8. So more than a 2 mile an hour difference, just by the difference in the wind. So another thing too is all the data that is compiled in my chart is from my Edge 1000, my Garmin bike computer. And I also collect data on a tablet that runs an app called Gaia GPS, which if you saw my video 15 in the beginning, that's the tablet that I have sitting on top of my handlebar bag. So what we're looking at on the website here is the web portal end of that data. So once that data is complete, it gets uploaded to the database online, and that's what we're looking at. So this is the 16th, and the average speed, I'll point that out here real quick. The 5.3 on this, the tablet is all GPS based, and the information here is compiled off the bike computer and the sensors. So you'll see a couple of differences. Like on the 20th, that average speed was 7.84. If we look at the Gaia GPS data, that comes to about 7.9. So it's very close, but you can see there's a couple slight differences in there. Nothing to be too concerned about. But let's go back to the 16th here. So our average speed was 5.3 miles an hour. Again, that's the total, including stops, etc. Then our moving average was 9.5. So you can see that moving average is noticeably higher. So again, if we go back to the 20th, the average speed there being 7.9, the all-up average, and then the moving speed was 10.1. So you can see how that direction and wind speed, or wind in general, made a difference in that moving speed and the all-up speed for each particular day. So with that, let's move on to the picture slideshow.